It's here, gamers. November 28th, skills and balance update. We've also got some relic changes in here. And the new relics also got showed off during the balance stream. It was a brilliant stream. I'd highly recommend checking it out. Okay, CMC and Roy in the mix, of course. And the new face of one of the balance developers, Trig, as well. Really fun. Actually, very funny stream. Shame you guys can't hear the audio because something went wrong with the VOD. Extremely funny. Well, so I guess you can't really enjoy it. Ha! But you can watch my VOD that has the audio on it. But never mind. We're stopping with that. Let's actually get down to the juice. Really good changes here overall. I think this is definitely going to be a balance match that's well received, especially if you are a heal Mesmer fan, or if you like a bit of Berserker in PvE, I think. It's not just focused on PvE, though. There's actually a lot of changes here to multiple different game modes. Definitely get the feeling that they weren't able to do everything they wanted. Some of the changes are kind of, you can see them laying the foundations. I definitely would have liked to see the patch be a little bit bigger overall, but I think definitely a really good patch that will improve the game. And there's certainly a lot of things that players will enjoy. And some of these ideas have actually been very well fleshed out, as we'll see when we actually get into that. We also have some relic rebalancing to try and make some more compelling options. However, we're going to do that last action when we talk about the new relics. So, let's go ahead and get right into it, shall we? I think it's time to go big. And first up, it is going to be Elementalist. I can see them all quivering in fear right now, but don't worry, it is good news this time. So, we have some changes trying to make Hammer a little bit better, and also Dagger offhand. Reasoning here, of course, very simple. When Secrets of the Obscure came out, Weapon Master Training made Sword Warhorn on literally every build insanely good. And they're trying to make Hammer and a Dagger a little bit more compelling. So that essentially, you're going to go for Hammer or Dagger offhand if you want a bit more DPS. And then you have the option to go with the Sword Warhorn for still very good DPS, but also you have that kind of support component attached to it as well. And we see 5% damage increase on Flame Wheel. That's actually significant, of course. It's a 5% damage mod on all of your damage, and you maintain this buff, of course, a lot when you're on your Hammer, and 5% critical strike chance as well on the air little orb as well. Really nice quality of life. I'm a big fan of seeing crit chance get added to a lot of power builds in PvE. I think that's one of the best things they can do. It kind of makes the builds a lot more flexible. It makes gearing a little bit more flexible as well. You can maybe fit some dragon pieces in if you start overcapping on crit. Definitely a big fan with that one in general. Bit of damage as well here on Ground Pound. This is the Earth 5 on Hammer. Power coefficient going up quite a lot, actually. And the cooldown's going down from 30 to 20 as well. And coefficient up to 2.0. And Ring of Fire in the offhand, we are seeing damage on that go up significantly, actually, on Dagger 4. So that should definitely really help. I would actually like to see a little bit more differentiation here. So in other words, Warhorn be a bit more of a trade-off in terms of damage output. Reason being there is that I think the support on that weapon actually is really tasty, and I think there should be more differentiation there, but this is definitely a good start. And some nice quality of life stuff here as well. For the water skills on Warhorn, just cooldown goes down. They probably could have gone even a bit more aggressive there, at least in PvE only, to help out any build that has Warm, but also heal Tempest as well, of course, which definitely is one of the builds that does still need a little bit of work, I think, in my opinion, overall. And then the rest of the changes for Ellie are essentially, for the weapon skills and all the skills, essentially tidying up some stuff, so to account for Weapon Master Training. So basically these are the dual attacks. So when you double attune, the double attune attacks, they've been made significantly stronger in PvP and World versus World. This is because, of course, you can use these on non-Weaver. And a lot of the time, even on Weaver, to be frank, you would use these occasionally 100%. But a lot of the time, you'd be kind of rotating the dual skills more often. So they're trying to motivate you to actually use these more often. And, of course, making Sword a little bit better where you don't have the dual skills on non-Weaver Elementalist builds, which I think is actually a pretty important part of kind of maintaining Weapon Master Training, especially when there's a unique mechanic that interacts with these weapons, right? Like something like Weaver, for example, or Hollowsmith Sword, right? Where the elite spec is important to the weapon. They're trying to decouple that. And funnily enough, that is actually a little bit of a theme across the board here. A lot of the changes here are trying to make sure that weapons are good on their own and aren't reliant on a specific trait. They've already talked about this kind of philosophy a little bit over time, and we're basically seeing them continue to develop that philosophy, especially with the introduction of Weapon Master Training, which makes sense to me, right? You don't want a weapon to be like trash unless you're playing a certain elite spec, right? That's obviously not their goal here, and I think that makes a lot of sense overall. And just some cooldown reductions here. Arcane Shield. This is actually a surprisingly good skill, by the way. I would never count this one out. Really good skill, because it's a 3-charge block and also a stun break attached to it as well. Surprisingly good, you know, if you're not super focused on getting damage, like if you're in the open world or something like that, actually a really nice skill to have, to be honest, this Arcane Shield overall. So cooldown goes down a little bit on that. Only by 5 seconds. So, like, you know, a bit of a hair reduction here. And Tornado gets a massive cooldown reduction in PvE. I still feel like this skill is really hard to take. It's definitely a fun skill, and I think they're trying just to make it more fun. Like, nobody likes a 150 cooldown skill, especially if it's not that good. Especially if there's other really good elite skill options for Ellie. You know, like Weave Self is really good. The Glyph of Greater Elementals is really fun to use. Fiery Greatsword is really fun to use. Really powerful. So they're just trying to make it a bit more compelling. I think there's maybe like a couple of very niche scenarios where you would end up using this. Maybe on like a heal build. I struggle to see it on a DPS build a lot of the time. But maybe in some kind of healing build, you would use this on a couple of bosses that you really want to break the bars and you can't damage them at the same time, and there's no healing pressure. But still a very, very niche skill. Next change for Weaver. This is actually one of my favorite changes here. I think Weaver players should be super happy with this. Check this out. Aquatic Stance. This is a Weaver heal skill. This skill also now grants endurance. Healing on activation goes up a lot, 2.6 to 4k, and the heal, AoE heal, when you strike enemies, goes up to 650. So what this does, as a bit of a recap, whenever you hit an enemy while you're in this stance, you AoE heal around your target. This is now, in my opinion, a really good survivability skill for Weave. We don't know exactly how much endurance it has. I'm expecting it to be 25. If it's 50, it's actually wild, by the way. That's like a free dodge, basically, on Weaver. Super nice. Bear in mind, Weaver already has evades on Sword 2 and Earth 2, so this would actually make it very evasive and very, very survivable in a PvE context. And now, Weaver, in addition to the barrier that you give AoE when you use a dual skill, you're also going to have the ability to actually provide a decent chunk of healing to your allies as well. So we're kind of seeing a bit of development in the utility on Weaver, and it being less of a glass cannon, more of having a bit of value to it, right? Which is kind of like why I think players tend to go like, oh man, Weaver, that's, you know, what the hell, right? You know, I do nothing. What about all, like, look at Scourge, look at all that barrier it does. Well, now you have some healing as well. This is really good, I think. And I think this will, well, again, I can't say for sure, obviously, but depending on numbers, I think this will be a pretty good choice, if not the default choice, I think, on a lot of DPS Weaver builds, because, again, getting endurance back is always super, super nice. I would like to see them buff the barrier a little bit when you use a dual skill. It's pretty low right now. They could probably go a little bit higher on it. I wouldn't go too much higher on it. It's like 500 per dual skill right now, which, by the way, actually does add up. But of course, you don't use dual skill super frequently. You could probably like double it, I think, in PvE. And then that would actually be pretty damn good, to be honest, because you do use dual skills very frequently. Woven Stride. This is just a trait that they wanted to make a little bit better. I don't think any build actually uses this right now. It's kind of a fun trait because it makes your swiftness better. Very unusual effect. It makes your swiftness go faster. But now, whenever you gain super swiftness, you also remove an additional condition as well. 3-second ICD in PvE, 5-second ICD in PvP and World versus World. I mean, would you use this? What build wants this, right? That's the thing you want to talk about, because the other two options are actually very good. Like, one of them is very good for bunkering. You get a lot of barrier from it. And the other one gives you a lot of damage. It's really tricky, I think, to figure out what kind of build would actually want this, to be honest. It does have a pretty cool effect, but I think you'll have to kind of wait for the right build to show up. It will be some kind of really anti-Condi bunker, maybe, in PvP. Is what you'd want to play on this, that just gives itself swiftness quite commonly, because of course, right, like this essentially says, right, gain swiftness when you get a condition, right? So in other words, it would remove that condition. So it gives you a huge amount of just like shrugging off condition pressure on this. So maybe if there's some kind of meta that evolves that involves that, you could end up using this on your kind of duelist Weaver, just to, you know, really, really handle conditions super well. And these ones are huge as well, man. I think these types of changes, by the way, are actually so important. I'm really glad that ArenaNet is focusing on this. I'm definitely a big enjoyer of the skills team right now. I really do think they're smart, and they know what's they know what's wrong. They know what the issue is, in my opinion. And I think changes like this demonstrate this. If you're watching this and you don't feel confident in the skills team, these are the types of changes, no joke, that should give you confidence in CMC and Trig and the rest of the skills team. Because they're fixing, you know, the cancer, right? Fixing an issue that caused circular projectiles to occasionally lose their abilities to strike enemies. Nice! Actually, very good bug fix. And also, check this one out. This one's fun. I think a lot of Catalysts are going to find Catalyst a lot more fun to play now that this one's been changed. This trait will now cause elemental empowerment to always be 50% more effective. Okay, effectiveness at the maximum number of stacks is unchanged. So basically what this trait did is that while you were at 10 stacks of elemental empowerment, the buff that you get from, you know, playing Catalyst and doing combos and stuff like that, the effectiveness is increased 100%. Now it's 50% all the time, and you still get the 100% up there as well. This means that you're going to not only ramp up a little bit quicker, but also it means that you're not going to get punished as hard for making a mistake, right? Or not getting your rotation right. Which, in my opinion, is pretty good. To be fair, the Sword Warhorn build definitely does make it pretty cozy. But, hey, maybe you'll run Hammer now, so you won't have that coziness of maintaining that. So I think that's a really nice change. This is the kind of change that, again, really communicates to me that I feel like the team understands what players are not having fun with, and they're trying to address it. Not only the balance side of it, but also the is this actually fun side. And I think changes like this, even though it's a small change, like these two changes are actually like small little tweaks, I think they will actually really significantly impact the player experience dealing with Catalyst. And I really like this change as well to Aquatic Stance. Because bear in mind, Weaver already has great damage. Like, Weaver, like, pumps. It absolutely does. It really, really does. Giving it that survivability and that ability to even help allies a little bit is a really fun thing to be able to do. And also a really fun way to add survivability by giving yourself more dodges, right? In addition to already the evasive kit of Weaver. So overall, I am really liking these changes for Ellie. Not a crazy amount of notes, but I think they will actually make the Elementalist experience a fair bit better. Some big improvements there. The only thing that's missing here is actually some heal Tempest stuff. I do think that the support Tempest builds are a little behind right now. Heal Tempest is still in a slightly weird spot. It's just not quite as flexible as a lot of the other healers. And hey, Heal Chrono's on the way. Coming soon, by the way. Stay tuned. So I definitely want to see in the future a bit of a pass on Heal Tempest, looking at its boon application and some of the flexibility that it has. I honestly think that maybe adding charges to some of the shouts would be a good way to do that. That actually might be pretty OP. To be honest, but there's some potential, and certainly looking at Boon Radii in the Arcane trait line, and on some of the Overloads, I think would be good. But hey, there you go. Maybe I can do a Elementalist. Look, should I do that, guys? Look, let me do the Zoomer thing. Guys, if this video gets 3 likes, I'll do an Elementalist balance wine video. Yeah! Okay, yeah, no. Right, anyway, that's it for Elementalist. I think that, look, that's going to warm the hearts of even the most jaded Elementalist mains. Anyway, moving on. Over to Engineer. Let's go. All right. So the theme here, it's going to be some improvements to rifle and pistol. And the theme is also that they want to bring Hollowsmith back in PvP. And Scrapper in general in PvE, some super fun stuff here, especially if you're a DPS Scrapper fan. And also a little bit of stuff for Heal Scrapper, not quite as much as, I think, you know, don't get too excited, Heal Scrappers. It's not quite there yet, in my opinion, but some good stuff. I think. So let's go ahead and get into it. So first of all is Net Shot. So they nerfed it. Oh no, but they made it do a lot more damage, and it implies vulnerability. Now, the reason they nerfed this, and this, anyone who plays PvP knows what I'm talking about, actually really hard skill to dodge, right? It has a very, very short cast time, and of course, Immobilize is an incredibly powerful effect, especially if you're in melee, right? Because the projectile's quite slow, but if they net shot you in melee, it's very, very hard to avoid it. Super hard to avoid. So as a result of that, they nerfed that for competitive purposes. It's still going to be fine. It's still going to be a good skill because they've compensated for the damage here in PvE. and obviously still a good utility skill to have. And Jump Shot now has an evade. This is cool. Hard, very skill testing to use this, but now in PvE, you can actually use this to maintain uptime and use that to evade skills, which I think is really interesting. And of course, I think this is, again, a bit of a PvP-oriented change, because they want to make using this skill... This is a skill that is very easy to interrupt, very easy to punish in PvP, and they're trying to make it more usable in these areas, I think. And that's kind of their end goal here as well. But fun in PvE, actually. Very skill testing and fun to use, I think. Like, anything that gives you kind of active mitigation, I think is really enjoyable to use in that regard there as well. Let's go. And next up, it's going to be pistol stuff. So Static Shot, Blowtorch, and Glue Shot. Static Shot, cast time goes down. Yeah, try dodging that one. Holy shit. And again, I think the reason for this, by the way, is because it's a blind. They want to make it like a mitigation tool, so you can blind people with it. And then maybe, you know, prevent them from hitting you, essentially, like a reactive blind. Reduce the cooldown from 12 seconds to 10 seconds in PvP and World vs. World, and Blowtorch. Minimum power coefficient from 1 to 2, and then maximum from 1 to 2 in PvE. And Glue Shot damage, or actually has damage now has a power coefficient, goes faster, and a 12-second cooldown in PvE. Like, these changes are actually very interesting to me, and they talked about this a little bit on the stream, and they said that they wanted to basically make it so that you could not run shield, basically, with a pistol build, or rather, like, as an NG DPS build, so you actually have an offhand that does something when you're playing PvE, basically, or any build, really, actually, right? Like, you know, in other game modes too. A little interesting, in my opinion, to say that. That feels like not ideal. To me, that says, oh, NG needs another offhand, right? Rather than, oh, we're just going to make pistol be power and condi. I think it's fine to have hybrid weapons, actually. I think that's totally fine. But I feel like the devs on stream, they wanted to say, ooh, we want another NG offhand at some point, which I guess that'll happen a couple of expansions down the line, in general. When it comes to, like, pistol in general, I mean, look, pistol already did, you know, you already ran this on a lot of DPS builds in PvE, and now it's going to do more damage, right? Like, on any kind of hybrid build, or hell, even power hollow build, you would use Blowtorch, because, you know, unless you needed the shield CC, you're going to do this anyway, so Blowtorch now has more damage, shield is more defensive. Good, that's what we like to see. Good differentiation there, makes it a little bit stronger. Very powerful utility on Glue Shot, by the way, in PvE. 12-second cooldown, high duration immobilize. Pretty good, actually. Oh, I guess only 1 second. Oh, actually, that might be the PvP version. Hang on a minute. I thought it was a little bit better than that in PvE. Well, yeah, it's only 1.5 seconds. Well, never mind then. I mean, hey, immobilize on a short cooldown? Still pretty good. I mean, I don't hate this, to be honest. Static Shot, again, kind of a mitigation tool here for the Pistol Main. And Pistol Main had one of, like, the weirdest builds, I feel like. It has got a lot better, actually, recently. There's the devs even remarked on this. There's a number of, like, Condi mech builds, like, terrorizing people in Ranked. So, hey, you know, have fun with that. Enjoy. So let's talk about the Heal Scrapper stuff next. So, Heal Scrapper, and it's interesting, actually. They even want to push this a little bit in PvP. Try and get some Heal Scrapper. I'm not sure if I see it right now. Maybe I'm out of the loop. Maybe I'm just not seeing it. But I don't see Heal NG being a thing in PvP. Even if it gets buffed a little bit, there's pretty good support options. Like, the supports in PvP are good. Like, Tempest and Core Guard are strong. You know, you have to be quite a build to dethrone those, to be fair. Because they're both just very good at what they do. And more importantly, they're very good at surviving. And to be honest, like, Heal NG is one of those builds that kind of just melts a lot of the time, right? Like, this is something that is very relevant in PvP, right? Especially supports. If you're playing support, you're usually going to be public enemy #1. It's either that or the Necro, like, or a glass cannon DPS of some kind. So you have to be tanky. And NG, I don't know. I've seen people try and play it. I've watched Floody try and play it. Hey, maybe Floody's trash, am I right? But I've seen people try and play Heal NG, and it has always looked complete trash in PvP. Who knows? It's good in World vs. World, of course. But yeah, We'll see what happens, I guess. This one's cool. Check this out. So bandage mask. I'm almost a little bit sad about this change, but I think it's way more usable overall. So instead of firing out 5 bandages in a little cone, now it targets 5 allies and then pew-pews them out, and it actually follows them around if they're not on full health. It will like track them. It's actually very cool. They showed it on stream. Really fun skill. Way more usable ability. And honestly, in PvE, your healing output is going to go up a lot, actually, with this. Because this ability actually heals a lot. You can actually, like, shotgun people and full heal them. But this is a very short bit. It was kind of cumbersome to use, right? Because you had to aim it at people. But now, this is really interesting. You're going to be able to use this in your healing rotation for regeneration uptime and for that healing uptime and burst healing in combination with the healing burst on Medkit 4. So this is actually very, very, very good. I think in terms of consistency in PvE content, very good for any heal NG build. Same in PvP as well, of course. And, you know, all that kind of good stuff. But yeah, a couple of buffs here for PvP. I don't think so. But I don't know. Maybe a couple of patches later we'll get there. Ooh. So I would say the big stuff for NG and PvP is actually Hollow. Looking at the Alchemy trait line in particular, and also this juicy stuff over here. So let's go ahead and talk about it. So Transmute is now no longer passive when you get condies. It's now when you use your heal skill. Super big change. It means whenever you pop your heal skill, you'll convert 2 condies into boons, which is very good effect, especially seeing as Hollow heal skills or NG heal skills in general are typically both good and with a short cooldown. And NG does struggle with condies a little bit, so this really helps you kind of take the pressure off using that Alchemy trait line with, of course, the boon access that comes with that trait line too. And just like the value that you get there in terms of your survivability with all that kind of good stuff. Emergency Elixir could also be a fun one as well for some kind of almost like, I feel like a duelist build here maybe on Holosmith, or something that has a little bit of duel potential, likes to 1v1 a little bit. Again, kind of that floody play style that we see with this one. You gain Elixir E when you use your elite skill now. So Mortar Kit, 0 cooldown. You can actually proc this on demand essentially, or on the beam, right? Like the laser beam, you can activate that and then charge into battle, all that kind of good stuff. So definitely a lot more usable, a lot more controllable, so it can be a more powerful effect as well in there. And here's the big one for Hollow. Spectrum Shield. Check this out. No longer has a reduced recharge, so you don't get the reduced recharge when you're over the heat threshold, so it will just be a 40-second cooldown in PvP and a 20-second cooldown in PvE. But you get 5 stacks of stability for 4 seconds when you use it. So you have a massive damage reduction effect, and you also have stability. This is huge. Hollow had its stability removed from Corona ages ago, and now it is back in the form of Spectrum Shield on the Exceed. I think this is actually a very powerful effect. I think it will be useful for Holosmith enjoyers. Stun break, stability, damage reduction. Love to see it. More condition management here as well. For our Holosmith friends as well, it's going to be pretty good, I think. We love to see it. And even better, Flashbark, the tool belt skill for Spectrum Shield is also getting buffed. It's a blind light aura, again, condition damage reduction on that light aura, and of course an instant AoE blind that you can use while you're stunned to mitigate damage, or of course you can simply use it to counter an attack or mitigate damage when you're in some kind of skirmish or a fight. Good skill, and now a cooldown reduction of nearly 50% is definitely very significant, actually, overall with this. So yeah, definitely good stuff for Hollow in PvP, I think. Will it actually make it into the full meta comp? It's really hard to say. Right now, I'm very uneasy kind of calling the meta, because I feel like the meta isn't super fleshed out right now. Everyone's kind of just playing whatever. I think a lot of players, especially at the high end, actually just kind of play what they like to play, right? Rather than what's like super, super sweaty. So I think people will actually play Hollow. I mean, but people already were, right? Because people like Hollow. It's definitely one of the, you know, the fan favorites in the PvP community and just the game in general. But yeah, I think this is a good change. I do like it. I like trying to push Hollow a little bit in PvP for sure. Yeah. Elixir B, okay, cooldown has now been reduced on this stuff. Big boons. Again, this is actually a good skill, by the way. Like, if you play PvE, you probably won't see the skill very often. It's actually very strong in competitive, though, because Toss Elixir B gives stability, which is very good. Obviously, it's even AoE, funny enough, actually, and gives you a bunch of boons. And, of course, Elixir B also does that. So shorter cooldown on that is also big. And bonus meme here, by the way. you might go, it doesn't give you swiftness anymore. Well, it's a chance to give swiftness. And as the devs correctly pointed out, this actually is going to end up better because do you really want swiftness? Not really, right? Like, swiftness is actually very, very easy to come by, right? In this regard. Yeah. So you don't really need it. You don't really need the swiftness. So you have a higher chance to get something that you actually want, essentially. With this one. And another alchemy change here is actually invigorating speed. This is a really important one too. This trait will now activate when gaining super speed. So this gives you vigor when you gain swiftness. And what's really interesting about this is an interesting interaction again with Hollowsmith in this regard. So Hollowsmith has a very powerful trait in PvP that makes your Hollow Forge 2 break all snares on you. So no chill, no cripple, no immobilize. You just break out of it and it gives you super speed. But it doesn't give you swiftness anymore. It gives you swiftness without the trait, super speed with the trait. So you you have this interaction anymore on invigorating speed, right? But now you do. That is big because again, vigor, very powerful boon in PvP. You want to have that vigor uptime so you have more evasion, so you can sustain better. You can then do damage better because you're less pressured, right? Etc. And now you have this uptime using the alchemy trait line. So invigorating speed, we then have our transmute coming into play as well. And you can see how all these pieces fit together for engineer here. So really, really powerful and definitely a nice change that I love to see that. Again, this is one of the absolute classic interaction with Engie. Like this is one of the most old school traits ever, right? Like this one and a super old school hollow interaction that's now been kind of resurrected back into the game there as well. We love to see it. Very, very, very good. Now let's talk about the scrapper stuff. Also cool stuff here. This is where I would say needs a bit more. Let's talk about the really good stuff first, though. This trait is so crazy. Check this out. So this is for DPS Scrapper. Applied Force. The condition damage penalty for this trait has been removed. So, hey, you want to play some kind of crazy hybrid Scrapper or something like that? Then, hey, you can go ahead and do that. Get your stability access in. But also, look at this. Look at this. Increase the bonus power per stack of might from 20 to 40 in PvE. Might gives you 30 power and 30 condition damage. This trait over doubles the effectiveness of might. Now, this is the pure DPS build, right? So pure DPS Scrapper is going to get a very significant damage bump from this. I'm expecting this to be really good, just straight up. In PvE, this is a really good build to play. Ridiculously tanky, big AoE damage, big DPS, has a lot of CC options, has function gyro too, right? To revive allies and stuff like that. Has some utility skill options as well. Very good. Very good. Has the stability as well. It's not amazing uptime on Applied Force, but just having a bit of stability here and there is actually really nice. Yeah. Power Scrapper next patch? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's going to be a very interesting build, I think. For PvE, in addition to the Quickness Scrapper build, of course. And that continues with some of the other ones here as well. Look at this. Mass Momentum. Gain might while you have stability, and Function Gyro applies stability to allies. Look at this. 5 targets. So now your Function Gyro is a 5-target AoE stability. And a lot of these changes are, I think they're aimed at multiple variants of Scrapper, not just the DPS variant, but also the heal variant. I feel like they're going to benefit. I feel like the big winner here is actually the DPS Scrapper and Quickness Scrapper. Heal Scrapper does benefit from these, but it's still a little bit half-baked, in my opinion, overall. But really, really powerful ability here as well. With Mass Momentum, the ability to do this, to give that stability in 5 targets is very coveted. Of course, it is a little bit tricky, right? Because, you know, the radius of this is... It's not exactly going to be absolutely fantastic, right? You know, it could be worse, though. You know, it could be a lot worse. I'm just quickly checking the radius and Function Gyro. It's 240. Yeah, that's what I thought. I was thinking, is it 360? No, it's only 240. So, you know, okay. You know, it's not terrible. And it is 2 stacks as well. 2 stacks is nice. Like, a lot of stability these days gives 1 stack, unless you're playing Guardian. So having 2 stacks is actually really nice. It's really nice that you have the ability to do that. In a similar vein, we have System Shocker. This is another adept trait for Scrapper. Now, whenever you use your function gyro, you're going to get that daze, but also give AoE barrier too. So combine that with Mace on your heal Scrapper, and you actually have some pretty respectable barrier access there as well. Again, not super powerful, and the big downside here with both of these traits is it does compete with the super speed trait, but in a way that's kind of good. It means that on some fights, I need the super speed, right? On some fights, okay, you know, I'm going to go for the stability, right? So you can kind of swap these out and have some actual decisions when you're kind of picking like how you're going to be approaching a certain encounter. So that is certainly a good thing. But yeah, again, big winner here is going to be DPS Scrapper, right? And Quickness Scrapper, in a way. Because, think about it. Think about it. You can just kind of take a lot of these for free, right? Like, a lot of this is just essentially going to be baked into your kit now on some of these builds because you weren't necessarily super worried about what trait you actually picked in the adept line for these builds. Because, you know, they're not necessarily DPS increases. They're just basically, the first set of traits is utility, right? Not really damage. Like, the damaging traits are like the Master and the Grandmaster traits. So you're very free on this for any kind of offensive style support build. And still not bad for healer as well. And again, Expert Examination, this is another one kind of aimed at heal builds. Your Function Gyro now grants protection when summoned, and using a healing skill, Toolbelt skill, grants protection to nearby allies. Great. Heal Scrapper, Pro uptime, actually very questionable. Not very good at all. In fact, one of its weaknesses, to be honest. This definitely helps with that. Again, a lot is being loaded onto the function gyro, so ArenaNet need to be careful with overloading that ability with too much boons and utility and the revival at the same time. Got to be a bit careful, because again, you use it to blast for quickness, and it's like, holy shit, this skill is doing everything right now. It's getting a little bloated. They need to be careful. But hey, it's certainly going to feel like a very powerful ability that you have to be careful with how you want to use it in different situations. Definitely it's a very flexible skill, like a lot going on with this particular ability. Of course, we have to see durations on how much this is, but I think this definitely will actually help out the heal Scrapper build a fair bit. Overall, in my opinion, and similar vein here as well, Blast Gyro, big buff for PvE, by the way, this is huge. Blast Gyro cooldown goes down to 15 seconds, so just straight up, your might upkeep on this is nice on any kind of boon build that you're doing here. Really, really, really tasty, actually. You're essentially, if you have 100% boon duration, you're going to be upkeeping, what, 20 stacks of might with this. Really, really good, very powerful. And bypass coating also cooldown goes down. This is a really strong skill. It's an AoE stun break and super speed if you have the Blast Gyro. Again, very common to see this pop up on a lot of the support-oriented Scrapper builds. And yeah, it's a very, very good skill. It even has a CC baked into it as well, right? It's a blast finisher, so you get even more might off that. It's very, very good. Powerful stuff, my friends. Powerful stuff. So definitely a big W for the Scrapper enjoyers and the Holosmith enjoyers overall. And a little bit of a buff to rapid regeneration healing. Again, they want to push the kind of the Brawler Scrapper a little bit, I think. And just Brawler NG in general in PvP and World versus World. And that's what we see them doing here. Just a little bit more healing. This is a trait you have to be careful with. You might be thinking, wow, they're being a bit conservative here. Trust me, you don't... If you don't know, okay? There used to be a scary build, okay? You don't want to know. Trust me, you don't want it back. But it continues. That's the stuff for all the base NG. What about Mechanist? Great question. This is a big one. Again, one of those changes that, man, they get it. They made relics work correctly with mech. That's the TLDR. It now works correctly. So Relic of the Herald, Brawler Scourge, Aristocracy, Monk, and Antitoxin. That counts as you, right? This is you now, right? So in other words, the Mechanist can actually use these relics effectively, essentially, when you have these relics. So like applying boons or healing, like all of these effects will essentially activate correctly. Good news. And even better news. Mechanical Genius, for a short period of time, the effect will remain active even after the mech moves out of range. So basically, you've got a grace period in your mech moving away from you randomly because of its Pepega AI before you get completely griefed by the 50% recharge increase. I'd probably go a little bit further and nudge the radius up on this, even if it's only by 60 to 420. Because 360 is not big. right? Especially when your AI just has a tendency to wander around and you kind of have limited control over it. Sometimes it's super hard to make the mech go where you want it to, and it kind of gets stuck on hitboxes a little bit, even when you tell it to attack. It's kind of annoying, to be honest. So I think this should be a little more lenient, even than it is now. Definitely a step in the right direction, though, making mech a little bit less frustrating. But yeah, I do still think that 360 is just too small for like how wonky the AI can be. And also, they actually nerfed this one. Look, they nerfed the burning on Super Signet and Rectifier Signet healing. They actually explicitly says this is because mech is causing problems in certain PvP brackets. In other words, yeah, it's an absolute noob stomper build. I'll translate that into slightly less polite speak. Mech stomps noobs hard. Very much like Trapper Ranger, for example. Absolute pub stomper. And yeah, nerfing that is important. It is important to nerf builds that perform really well against less experienced players. It absolutely is. Because, I mean, if players start playing the game, they get obliterated by really annoying anti-fun builds that are hard to play against but very easy to play, then they're not going to have fun, right? So, hey. Good change if you ask me. And that's everything for Engineer. We absolutely love to see it. Again, some very positive changes in my opinion. And now, let's go ahead and move on to Guardian. Support-focused Firebrand is receiving a few smaller improvements in PvP to make it a competitive pick. We've also tuned up a few of the Guardian's defensive tools alongside some improvements to the hammer, including additional burst damage potential with Banish now refreshing Mighty Blow when striking an enemy. So, Symbol of Protection auto attack goes faster now. This is in all game modes. So, again, this makes Hammer a little bit better in PvE as well. But a lot of these changes are mostly aimed at PvP for Dragon Hunter and also for just Guardian in general and Firebrand. But that's kind of nice. I do think that Hammer is one of those weapons that has some potential. It just gives permanent protection all the time. Not a huge deal, of course, for Firebrand in PvE. It handles protection pretty well with shield and mace these days, so not too much of a problem. Throwing in the old Tome 3 in there sometimes with the Virtues trait line, it's pretty easy for that to handle. But, I do like, I like Hammer. I remember back in the day, Dragon Hunter was a meta pick as a DPS in PvE just because it did perma protection. Yeah, do you guys remember that? When you actually ran Dragon Hunter for the little bit of extra healing from Rid of Persistence and AoE Prot when Prot was hard to come by? Yeah, I remember that. That's old school right there. Ho, 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 ho. Bring that back. And that build, by the way, the Guild Wars 2 community would have loved that. Do you know what its rotation was? Literally auto attack F1 and put down the traps. Yeah, seriously, it actually was. Anyway, so let's go ahead and continue here. Some Hammer Toolkit abilities actually get a little bit adjusted here. So Zealot's Embrace is quicker, so you can land your Immobilize a little bit snappier to line up your really, really big combo. And, of course, remember, Hammer is a very interesting setup here. So now, Banish hits 3 people. Very fun. You can bonk 3 people. Actually makes it much more This is actually more important than it seems, by the way. This is not just, ooh, we can bonk 3 people. It makes it way easier to bonk a target if it's a little bit chaotic, right? Because even if you get the wrong target, you'll still bonk them. And think how big this is. If someone's reviving, let's say you're in a PvP match, and someone's reviving, or someone's stomping, right? There's a lot of cleave going on, for example, just in a variety of scenarios, okay? You can now bonk all of them. You can disrupt people's ability to revive, people's ability to stomp. Very impactful, actually. And again, Hammer Guard is a build that is playable. It's not exactly like crushing the metagame right now, but honestly, given half the chance, like some kind of Willbender build or even Core Guard, it can return. Hell, even Dragon Hunter, I could see like Hammer Dragon Hunter like emerging, especially with the direction they want to push it. But absolutely, this is something to watch out for, especially seeing as it now refreshes your cooldown on Mighty Blow. This is bigger than it seems, because bear in mind, guys, the previous rework to Hammer was that Banish now gives you your next Mighty Blow will teleport you in. But what does this allow you to do? This means you can judge his intervention in with Mighty Blow, boom, then you can Zealot's Embrace them to immobilize them if you want to, or just go straight into the Banish, boom, that bonks them, and then you can Mighty Blow and follow up immediately. So you can go Mighty Blow, Banish, immediately into another Mighty Bird. That is colossal burst damage. Absolutely huge. And that's, of course, exactly what these Guardian builds are very well known for, is that amount of damage output that they're able to deliver in a very quick window and with very high instant mobility with teleports and so on. Quite a fun build to play. It's a build that they have to be careful of because the problem with this build is that it actually has the same issue as Condimech. They probably don't want this build to actually be meta. And the reason is, it is very hard to play against for a new player. You have to really understand the concept of kiting spots and no port spots, which is not very well telegraphed in the game whatsoever, right? Obviously, in order to play well against this build. So I wouldn't expect this to actually get pushed that hard as a meta build. Definitely as like a fun build that exists that players can play with. They want to play with a hammer, but it's just super hard for new players to deal with this in competitive modes because of just the nature of how it works. It like teleports on you, and you need... You can't, like, react to it. You need to be proactive against a build like this, which is super hard to learn, I think, when you're just kind of getting the ropes in PvP. But also, this one is also kind of pushing this with the Valor trait line. Again, Valor trait line actually does come up on a lot of these builds, especially Core Guardian, funnily enough, actually. This is a bit of a weird one at Pulse Protection, which actually was pretty good, to be fair, actually. But now it's been completely reworked into something much more exciting, Redemption. So when you use skill 3 on your Virtue, so in other words, the Courage one, the Aegis-y one, you now get a lesser Litany of Wrath, which is a lifesteal. That's a lot of sustain, actually, on these builds, by the way. A lot of sustain. Because that basically converts a lot of your damage into healing. And this is impactful on a variety, in a lot of potential situations here. This means that if you pop your Dragon Hunter F3, you can massively resustain, especially with Renewed Focus. You can double tap it, right? Like you can F3, re-heal yourself, then eventually Renewed Focus, boom, heal yourself again, as long as you get some burst damage off. Very strong. Litany of Wrath is one of the most powerful effects in the game. Having access to that without committing to the heal, because there's lots of good heal skills on Guardian, and also having that, a second ability to activate that, is actually very strong. Valor actually does see play on Guardian builds, on Guardian damage builds, and of course on Guardian support builds. You're probably not going to run that though on a support build, obviously, right? So this is actually powerful, I think. Like you can get a lot of value out of this, especially if you're in some kind of cleave scenario and you're trying to sustain while there's a lot of firefighting going on simultaneously. And also might duration goes up. Again, this is the Valor Grandmaster trait, I believe. Whenever you get a block, you gain might. Again, amazing on stuff like Dragon Hunter, where you can get loads of blocks and stack up loads of might, and it's a 9-second duration now, which really helps with your staying power with your damage output on certain builds like this, or builds that activate a lot of Aegis here as well. With this one, very powerful indeed. And kind of on that note, we have Shield of Courage. Duration goes down game-wide to 45 seconds. I'd actually like to see them do this. They're conservative here because they're worried about the build becoming really, really strong. And again, builds that have very high block uptime, very high evade uptime, you don't want that. In the game, obviously, it ends up being very uninteractive. I'd like to see them actually reduce this a little bit more in PvE. They could do at least another 5 seconds in PvE, I think. I really love the idea of Willbender kind of being like the glass cannon DPS, Dragon Hunter being the kind of more reserved, more defensive oriented with, you know, F2 to heal people. You have your block to shield everyone from damage. It's a really cool RP in my opinion. So I think they could go a bit further in PvE. Definitely helps out PvP, though, because, of course, Dragon Hunter got completely thrown in the trash with no Rune of the Trapper anymore, because, of course, we're on Relics now, so no stealth. So they're trying to improve the sustainability, again, using Redemption, again, using Shield of Courage, and, of course, our next trait, Piercing Light. So Piercing Light is Hunter's Premonition. You gain Aegis when you gain a trap skill. So they're kind of equating Aegis to stealth here, basically. Right, so whenever you drop a trap down, you'll now gain an Aegis. Obviously, really nice in PvP, just for mitigating damage. That's a lot of mitigation, because of course traps have a relatively short cooldown, and you run a lot of them in PvP. The heal trap is good. The spit, you know, the test of faith is really good as well, of course. So you're going to get value out of this. You're going to get a lot of Aegis procs with this one, in addition to all of your other Guardian goodness. And Defender's Dogma, 180 vitality game-wide on Dragon Hunter. Very fucking tasty. Oh my goodness me, that's juicy. And the Piercing Light is also amazing in PvE, because you can take any adapt trait you want on Dragon Hunter, because none of them are DPS increases or DPS losses or whatever. Now, you can just take this for free, and you're going to have so much tankiness on your DPS Dragon Hunter. Whenever you get a trap in your rotation, Aegis comes back up again. beautiful synergy with, of course, virtues in PvE as well. Bear that in mind, because now you are going to have a way easier time upkeeping virtues for the extra damage while you have Aegis. Way easier. In addition to just making you tankier, you also just have a way easier time upkeeping that. Super nice. Big win for the Dragon Hunters out there. And more damage in PvP, 10% minimum damage on Pure Sight. This is the one that says, depending on your distance to your opponent, you do more damage. And that's just up in general. So more damage, more survivability for DH across the board in basically every game mode. Yeah, wow. We're getting buffed today. We're getting buffed. And it's not over. We're also buffing Firebrand as well. Lawmaster, page generation. You get a page every 5 seconds in PvP. And Swift Scholar has no internal cooldown. This means whenever you go into a virtue or go out, in other words, a tome, you get quickness. This only activates if the tome is blue, by the way. So if you haven't procced the passive, don't get any funny ideas about going in and out infinitely for infinite quickness. This is going to make it, especially in PvP, way smoother to play Firebrand, by the way. Way smoother. So you can go from tome to tome and chain your abilities together with that quickness uptime way easier. Do you know what the biggest weaknesses of Firebrand? Super interesting, by the way. Do you know one of the big reasons why you play Core Guard, not Firebrand? Because Core Guard doesn't have cast times. And this is actually true of Tempest, a little bit less so, of course, because you have to channel overloads, but of course you can instantly attune, right? And your auras are instant cast a lot of the time as well, but you get the idea. Big thing about Core Guard is that most of its skills are instant, like your virtues, your shouts are instant cast. And the fact that Firebrand didn't have that actually makes it kind of slow, and it makes it vulnerable in a way that Core Guardian isn't, especially because you have to sack a defensive trait line. You typically give up Valor in order to play Firebrand, so you lose a huge amount of sustain with no altruistic healing. And as a result of that, this will really help, in my opinion, with that. And that is not all. We also have some good stuff here. So you get more vulnerability on Tome Auto Attack, the Tome 1 in PvP. And this is the big one. Really nice for PvE too, by the way. 5 stacks of Might to nearby allies for 8 seconds in all game modes. Super nice. Guardian Might uptime in PvE on Firebrand, actually mediocre. Not good, actually. This makes it way better, because, of course, this is one of your key damaging skills, and therefore you're going to have Might uptime on Quickness Firebrand and also on Heal Firebrand. Again, this is kind of what I hope they did. They're bringing up the supports to be more like Herald rather than de-heralding Herald, which I think is actually probably the better choice for the game. Also, huge in PvP, by the way. If you're in a team fight, giving 5 stacks of AoE Might and the burn to everyone, yeah, that's a really attractive, aggressive maneuver to make a good use of those pages. And to follow that up, you can now CC people a little bit easier with the taunt on Daring Challenge. So you can, load up your allies with Might and the Ashes, and then boom, you can wall up your enemies with a taunt to lock them down and actually get some DPS. Is this enough? It's so hard to say, honestly. Does this make Firebrand good in PvP? Man, I feel like I have to be super boring and almost say that I still think you're going to be too squishy to live. Maybe not, though, because you can, with renewed focus, you have the higher quickness uptime, so you have more stats more of the time as well. I don't know. I'm kind of umming and ahhing on this one. I think there's some potential. I'm going to give, the cop-out answer and say there's some potential. I feel like it might be a little bit too squishy still for PvP, because this damage is pretty high right now, and stuff like Core Guard is super tanky. Like, Tempest is super tanky, able to survive that damage, and I think Firebrand's going to be pretty squishy, but I do like that we're trying to see more supports brought into the game. It's definitely one of the, I'd say, a big roadblock in Guild Wars 2 PvP right now in the meta is the support. So the fact they're trying to push support Scrapper, they're trying to push support Firebrand, I actually think is a really good idea to kind of open that up a little bit more. They even talked about trying to push Spectre, rather, actually. Not sure about that one, but we'll see. Willbender. You get 180 Vitality instead of Healing Power on the one of the added traits. In general, Healing Power is pretty meh, especially if you aren't, really committing to it with, healing modifiers and stuff and going for a full heal build. So, in general, this is going to be better. Are you going to opt for this? I feel like a lot of the time you're just going to want to go for more damage and just blast your opponents, right? Because you get more power on the other option, and your flames do more damage. So it's like, not sure if I see this trait getting picked up super often. But also, Roiling Light, this is the stun break. You now gain resistance instead of swiftness, which in general is going to be a way better boon, especially seeing as Willbender has innate movement speed as well. So yeah, good stun break, by the way. 15-second cooldown. Very, very juicy. I will actually say one thing that hasn't happened here. You know, it was really funny. It was so funny because I was watching the stream and my chat actually had like 7 people immediately get mad and go like, where are the nerfs in World versus World? And that is because the terror of the roaming community, the menace, the Willbender. It is absolutely, you know, it is bullying people in World versus World. It is very good. It is very hard to beat. Didn't get nerfed, but hey, listen. Imagine thinking ArenaNet balance around roaming. Yeah, they don't do that. So... unlucky, I guess. Maybe it's some... I mean, they kind of did it with Soul Beast. They nerfed Soul Beast, I think, partially because of PvP and partially because of World vs. World is like a kind of a bonus meme, to be fair, actually. So I can see them doing it at some point, right? Like, all memes aside, all jokes aside, I think it will happen eventually. They'll probably get there. But again, like I said, they definitely did what they could here. There's a lot of really good changes here, but certainly this is a start, right? This is not the end, right? They're going to be cranking out one of these patches once every 3 months. So expect to see stuff like this and this kind of patchwork approach to kind of whack-a-moling all of the issues that pop up in the game. It's never going to be perfect, right? But anyway, it feels good. It definitely does feel good indeed. So yeah, so some good stuff there for Guardian as well. Pretty much across the board, actually. A lot of options there. A lot of options for basically every version of Guardian. For Core, DH, Willbender, and for Farmer. I guess Willbender not much really happened, to be fair. And they didn't really do anything about Willbender in PvE. Again, I feel like this is one of the things that they probably just couldn't squeeze in. I'd love to see them make a lack Willbender a little bit better. Like, if a lack Willbender gave might or something in some way, or maybe some protection, I think that build could actually be really attractive. And I think a lot of people like Willbender in PvE. It's like, whenever I speak to Willbender players, they're always like super passionate about it. They're a little bit like mentally drained from their spec being kind of a semi-meme. But they're enthusiastic, you know? They're mentally drained, but still enthusiastic. So I'd love to see them actually have a go at really flesh that build out, like really fleshing the Alacrity Willbender build out. And there's a few usability problems with the DPS builds too, but well, look, we'll get into that later. You know, that's for another time. Okay.